We have a quorum, so I want to respect people's time. We're here on time. So let's call the meeting to order. And our first agenda item is number 1, review and approve minutes from the last meeting for 13/22. Thank you so much, Mary, for sending those out to us. And a really nice job with them as always. Did everyone get a chance to review the minutes?
Yep.
Does anyone have anything that they need to see fixed or shifted, or anything that they want to raise as a concern? The only thing that I thought was that the word rescission was spelled wrong, and then I Googled it and realized that in my mind I was spelling it wrong. So it's perfect. I couldn't find anything that needed to be changed. It was great, Mary. All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you, John. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
So I want to move a little bit out of order here, and that I want to start with the contract development update. So I'm just going to shift agenda items 2 and 3 here. So let's tackle 3 first, the contract development updates. Amy, do you want to share what you know right now about the Lady Liberty, the War Memorial, and the Wayfinders?
Yeah,
I'm also happy to jump into about what I know.
Yeah, so the Lady Liberty and War Memorial have, the Lady Liberty has been signed. The War Memorial was already signed, but this was an amendment for a 2-year extension. So by the way, the Lady Liberty, I mean the actual restoration. And the War Memorial Amendment has also been signed. So that's really great because that took a while. Wayfinders, I have still not heard back. I just sent another email today to James at Wayfinders because he said he was going to circulate the draft. But I haven't heard anything more.
Okay. And the Wayfinders piece too, is that the one you were asking about earlier, Amy, about whether we'd heard back from Mass Historic? No, it wasn't Wayfinders.
Oh no, that was Chestnut Street.
So the Chestnut Street project we sent to Mass Historic, they said their timeline was that we would hear back within 6 weeks.
But we would have to hear through Kathy Degnan, right?
We just haven't heard anything back yet. Yeah. So when I checked in with Kathy, we still hadn't heard anything back. I hope to also speak with her again tomorrow about a variety of pieces, but I'll also bring that up again. But the last I had spoken to her 1 week ago, she had not heard anything back from Mass Historic. So it's just longer than the timeline that has sort of been suggested to us. But in some ways, it seems more in alignment with what I expected in terms of timeline.
I think it would be a good idea to reach out to them though and say, hey, we sent this.
I know that Kathy did. Like, it wasn't like she was just waiting. Like, she was, I know she did reach out to them. So, and I'll ask her to do so again.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So let's move to number 2. So updates on city council actions and orders. So the finance subcommittee, you know, just to kind of trace it back just a little bit to make sure we're all sort of on the same page. So when the finance subcommittee met originally to consider Miracle League playground and the Girls Inc. exterior restoration and slate roof project, they had recommended that the city council fund the Miracle League and had recommended that they not fund the Girls Inc. project. It then went to the full city council meeting. There was a very robust conversation there. And what came out of that was some concerns from City Councilor Degnan about whether or not we had inappropriately given eligibility to a project, right? So like we, for every project that we have a period of eligibility, they have to complete an application. Amy has to do her due diligence to reach out to the state coalition to look at what we've already done as precedent and to decide if something has eligibility. So Jordane's argument is that we inappropriately gave something eligibility or an applicant eligibility because it falls underneath maintenance. And what's interesting, as I started doing more research to figure out how to respond to that, is as I reached out to a number of preservationists in the field, you have folks who are like, this is really complex work, right? Stuart Saginaw at the CPA Coalition will say, this is really complex work. The same project, right? To restore, to repair brick, right? And mortar concerning brick could be preservation, could be restoration, could be rehabilitation, could be maintenance, right? It really could be any of those four things, which are all actually distinct. And some are allowable and some are not. And so it really depends on the specific applicant. It depends on their context. It depends on the scope of the work. It depends on their intent. And in this case, Assistant City Solicitor Kathy Degnan had gotten the information from us in that we just passed along their application. We passed on the information that we had and we determined eligibility. And she wrote an opinion, which was then sent to the city council, and they reviewed that opinion. And the opinion found that the project was not eligible. She said that she believed it was maintenance. But I also think, right, so when I went to the finance subcommittee following that to reconsider that, it was tabled in the, or not tabled, it was effectively, the motion was, who is in agreement to fund this project as long as it's approved by legal, right, was all in favor except for one dissenting. So the project would have been funded as long as it was found eligible by city council, by the city solicitor. But then the assistant city solicitor wrote an opinion saying that she did not think that it was eligible. So then it kicked back to finance to have this conversation where she was sharing back out there, here's my opinion. And in that opinion, effectively, there were some pieces that I think, and this came out later when we had the conversation, that maybe just weren't there. So, and this is a field that's really complex, and understanding the difference between restoration and rehabilitation and preservation and maintenance is complicated. And I think the assistant city solicitor felt like she didn't have all the information that she needed. So the architect, Kuhn Riddle, put together a document that explained why they believed that it was eligible, and also just gave more information on the project itself. The mason, the folks who would do the roof repair, came forward with additional information on exactly what they would do, what percentage of the brick they were going to be repairing, and that sort of thing, sort of to give just a more detailed description of the scope of the work. So I represented the CPC in the finance committee meeting last Monday. I had also done my research and presented why I believed that it was eligible. I also presented my thinking about the opinion itself. In that, right, sort of like out of context, if we're going to define brick repair and slate roof repair as maintenance, then we already have projects we've put forward that really are not eligible, right? Like Wisteria Hearst as a project is exterior brick repair. And so it becomes this can of worms for me around, well, this is precedent. Like we've already, the Chestnut Valley Opportunity Council project is exterior brickwork repair. So is Wisteria Hearst. Like we're a city that has nothing but brick and slate. We're going to have a lot of projects that are going to come forward to us that are going to need this type of work. And we do believe it's absolutely eligible. We do believe it's within the realm of preservation. It's not just standard repair, because it really does align to capital improvement, and it aligns to the preservation of a building. If we don't do this work in this holistic way, these buildings won't survive. If you're waiting until 80 or 90% of a slate roof has to be repaired, it's probably not salvageable anymore because there's so much damage to the structure, right? The other piece is that most structures don't wear evenly. So it's not likely that you would have to repair 90 to 100% of something, right? In this case, all of the issues with Girls Inc. are tied to water damage, which comes from not having appropriate roofing, flashing, gutters. So areas of the building have been worn away. Sorry.
Can I use this for my lip?
She has my lip gloss. Okay. 30 seconds. I will be right back. I missed that. What did she ask for?
Lip gloss.
Oh, okay. That's funny.
Hey, enjoy the years now. They're gonna fly by, Megan, believe me.
Oh my goodness,
Is
that's
very
the stuff.
important.
It's delightful, actually. She's holding it. She's got her face is like covered in lip gloss, and she's like, "I can use this for my lips, right?" All right. Well, so my argument was, you're not gonna see a building that comes to you and says, "We need this kind of work done," and it's like, in the city solicitor's opinion or assistant city solicitor's opinion, it was like, well, if they're only, fixing 20 to 25% of the brick, is that really capital improvement? Or is that just kind of repair that's not really essential to the functioning of the building or essential to the value of the building increasing? And I was trying to sort of paint this picture around, if you don't do this work, these buildings fall down and they're not going to wear evenly, right? Because weather doesn't affect a building equally. So the end of that was the city, Kathleen Degnan saying, okay, I feel like I have more information now. I'm going to represent the city solicitor's, office, the thinking at the next finance meeting, which is the end of the month. It's on the 23rd.
Mhm.
So right now, Girls Inc. is still, it's unclear to us if it's going to move forward or in what way. Right, it's possible they might say this piece where we think is eligible, this piece is not. Right, we're gonna have to wait to see how the city solicitor, and the assistant city solicitor work this out. And I think we'll know more by the next meeting, because finance will have, existed, will have happened prior to that. We'll have heard what that revised opinion looks like, but it's in the process of some more discussion and revision. Any questions about that or thoughts about how this affects us? Or
So if it's not approved, Megan, it comes back into the to our funds, right?
yeah, right. In effect, it never is encumbered. It's just still there in this year.
Mhm.
Yep.
And
Megan.
will it set a,
And if unspent would be moved into the next year.
and will it set a precedent for all decisions going forward?
What are you thinking? Can you say more about that?
Well, I guess it depends on how they answer, but the answer that, as an example, that the solicitor's office gave, granted it was before you had offered them all this additional information, but if we had taken that as face value, it would have influenced all our decisions going forward, I believe. As you said, any brickwork would be just out of the picture.
Yeah, or I think we would be very cautious.
Mm.
Right. And that, so that I said, I know that it was said a few times, well, this was just the Girls Inc. project. It is not precedent setting. And I said, I don't see how that could be true. Because if we've put a project forward that we think is eligible and you're saying back it's not, that's going to set precedent. It's going to totally change how we view what the city solicitor will accept as eligible. And so, I did say that. I don't think that's possible. I think there are reasons why someone would want to argue that it's just this project and isn't precedent setting, because it, that feels easier, right? To be like, oh, it's just this project. We're concerned about, not others. But I actually worry about the arbitrary nature of that. I don't think that that's really possible to do, to decide something is not eligible, but then say that the exact same scope of work or very similar scope of work, every applicant is different, is not eligible elsewhere. I do think that's problematic. And I do think it would change how the committee felt. I think every brickwork and slate work project would be, we would need more information from the city solicitor about the parameters, because we do think it's precedent setting. So what percentage of slate needs to be fixed in order for you to consider it capital improvement and not repair? 30%, 35%? Like you're also setting a parameter at which our applicants will hear you and they will make the project fit that. And maybe they really only have to replace 20%, but now they're going to save 30. You know, like I do think that there's that effect too, that it could have, which I think is actually detrimental to preservation in general, setting, you know, boundaries like that. Marco, you had your hand up.
I was going to ask the same question, you know, what the impact is on past and future applications.
Yeah. I also raised that we have a lot of projects we know are coming down the pike to us, which are very popular. City Hall is coming to us. Like, it's very clear to me. We have Scots Tower coming, we have Anniversary Hill Park coming, we have City Hall coming, the Annex. There's a number of city properties and buildings that are going to come to CPA for support over the next 5 years. And if you say that, you know, we're going to deem it repair if we're doing exterior work, if it's not every brick, or if it's not an extensive number of stones, then if City Hall comes back as needing 20% of their stone regrouted, we won't be able to support that project. We will not be able to, even though we want to. So yeah, I think we have to see what comes out of it, and then we have to go from there. But ultimately, the city solicitor has the ability, absolutely, to decide the scope of what they believe is eligible in this case, and in other cases too. Mary, it looked like you wanted to say something.
It's kind of pointless. It's okay. It just will take up time.
Okay. The other piece is one of the city councilors, I wanted to name Tessa Murphy-Rumboletti, really did go out of her way to thank our committee for their work, and to just name that we have a process and we do follow our due diligence, right? Like, I believe Amy is more cautious than I would like her to be. I'm going to be frank, right? We have had arguments where she's been like, well, this is not eligible. And I'm like, well, why can't we make it eligible? Why can't this be eligible? It's a great project. She's like, no, because of the following things, right? So, you know, I firmly believe that if Amy has done her due diligence and she works with the state coalition, she's often asking questions. She's trying to figure out what's eligible, and she's very like legalistic about it. You know, that to me is like, I know we're doing our due diligence. And so like Murphy-Rumboletti said, like, they're doing their due diligence. And if we keep going to the city solicitor, we're effectively doing the work of the committee, and we need to trust the committee, which I appreciated, because I think we are doing that work here. Amy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when I spoke to Stuart Saganor at the coalition about this issue of like whether something is maintenance or not, he said it really is in a way more of an art than a science. And this is always the most troubling and difficult to determine issue. It's come up in other places as well. So yeah, so it's difficult, but one point that I try to make, like when I look at those applications, is I'm looking to see, is there a preservation issue? Meaning, is there some damage that can come to the envelope of this building if nothing is done? And I specifically asked the project leader, you know, for Girls Inc. that question, and she told me there was water damage and bricks falling. And, you know, so that's why I thought that it was eligible.
To folks who just joined us, welcome. Helene and Maribel, I gave an overview of what's been happening with City Council and the City Solicitor's Office. So we'll make sure to send the link out afterwards to everybody who wasn't here tonight. And then you can always re-listen to that section just so you're caught up to speed on all of the craziness that's been happening.
Can you hear me? This is Helene.
Yes, hello.
Hey,
Welcome.
hi. So sorry, things are a little chaotic at my house at the moment, so I'm off the camera, and I hopefully will be on soon. But and I'm sorry to be late. I guess, you know, I had just put forward in the email, and then, you know, I think it potentially needs to just be put towards the whole group, is just I was a little concerned about, I don't know if there was more research done, but I was surprised to see some of these terms being defined by Black's Law Dictionary and Google. Like, that surprised me. And so, you know, as this is an issue that has come up in other places and there's been these conversations, it seemed like you guys reached out to the right resource, to the state. And there's other resources, there's case law, there's potentially, maybe there isn't, but you wouldn't know that from the opinion. So I guess that would be my question, whether we are kind of enabled to ask those more specific questions just about, like, you know, what, like, because the question is a complex one for the reasons I'm sure you guys have talked about, and we're not the only ones to deal with it. And so it just seemed like a very limited kind of delving into to get the definitions.
So Helena, I presented to finance last week, and if anyone wants to go back and watch that, to watch all of it unfold, it was from 9:40 to 10:40 at night last Monday. And really went in depth. The Kuhn-Riddle architects sent a letter that really did go back through and present case law, did present the context of this particular work using the documents that we use for eligibility. So that was my ask, was as this opinion gets reconsidered and revised, if we could see it in the context of the documents we use for eligibility, not only, in terms of this project, but we would need to know what it means in terms of moving forward. And the best way for us to know what it means moving forward is to see it in the context of the definitions from the Department of Revenue and the Department of the Interior standards for historic preservation and rehabilitation, because that's the bedrock of what we're using to determine eligibility for an historic project. So yes, I think the goal is to see that revision, supported by those documents.
I'm sorry if I missed it. Could you share that, what you're talking about?
Yes,
okay.
I can do that. Yeah, these were all documents that were shared to the finance subcommittee last Monday.
Okay.
Yep.
Were they emailed to our committee?
No.
Okay. All right. No, I'd be very interested to see that. And I'm glad that you made that ask. That sounds fabulous.
Yes, and I completely hear you. And I think some of this is that fine line of trying to respect the work of our colleagues in government and trying to support folks to understand where we're coming from and to better understand the context in which we're working. There's a lot of folks people are still getting to know who we are as a committee, what can you use our funding for? And I think we are heading into a period of time in which we are going to see increased oversight because of who is on the city council, because of the, kind of the way that, legal is being used. I think that's possible. And that's something that we just need to be aware of. I do think that I've learned a lot through this process. And we knew Girls Inc. was controversial, although I think I was more thinking it was about the New England Farm Workers Council application. But we did get 3 letters from the Hoyok Taxpayers Association that described, their oppositions to any nonprofit being funded in the city for a building that had been taken off the tax rolls. And, I think that there's a little bit of forethought that we can put in as a committee in the future around what we present to finance and the city council when we know a project is controversial. We just have to be sort of ready for, let's anticipate the arguments and let's make sure we're putting it forward with those arguments being answered rather than opening ourselves up to oversight. So that's where I'm at in terms of my takeaways from the process. I also spoke with the Hoyok's Taxpayers Association on Thursday. I asked to go, and they were nice enough to allow me to go speak with them at the board. I shared our list of projects. I shared the percentages, all the pieces that I've shared to you recently, because I feel like, the second part of this, agenda item is talking about some recent orders that have been put from City Councilor Bacon to either revoke CPA or to reduce its tax levy from 1.5% to 5%, which is the lowest possible. There's only one community in the state that has 0.5. 1.5 is very common. And then you can have up to 3%. So there are some CPC communities, right? Like Fall River just posted yesterday the projects that they are approving. It's like $2.5 million worth of projects, right? Because if you're taking in a 3% tax levy and then you not only get the 35% state match, you also get additional rounds of matching when you're 3% versus the 1.5, which we are. So I shared the scope of the work that we've been doing, and a number of folks from HGA shared that they, were glad that I had come to share it, that there's not a lot of understanding around which projects you've shared. I think some folks were surprised. I heard people say things like, I didn't really understand these were the projects you had funded, right? I had a different understanding in my mind about kind of what you stood for and what you were funding or not funding. So if the only project you have a problem with over $2.6 million worth of funding over 5 years is one project for $150,000, then in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, do I support this or not? When $150,000 is way less than the state match, right, for a year. So if you're really concerned about a project, you could kind of rationalize it as like, well, that's the state match coming in, right? It's not just Holyoke taxpayers who are putting money into this. This is a state match as well every year that, the pool of money exists through the registrar or the registry of deeds. So anyone that buys property in Holyoke is funding that fund. And it's a state fund. So everyone's paying into it regardless of whether you're a CPA community or not. And there's 188 of us. So it's sort of money up for the taking that we're all creating. And if you don't put in your own skin in the game, you don't have your own tax surcharge, then you can't access that fund, right? So that was something that I presented on Thursday as well, just to sort of build that awareness. Passing notes to my husband. Okay. Any questions about what's happening at City Council around trying to revoke CPA or bring the surcharge down to 0.5%? Like, what are folks understanding about that process? Or what questions do folks have? Mary?
Will you be offered the opportunity to give a presentation? And also included in that, you'd want to say something about the amount of money. If it was 0.5, how much would be collected and how much would be matched approximately?
Yeah.
So will you have the opportunity to go to City Council in regards to any of that?
I briefly, along with a Ward 1 resident, Linda Pratt, spoke at public comment at the City Council meeting on Tuesday in support of CPA and gave some framing and information. I was hoping Israel Rivera was going to be here today as our City Council rep, because I've asked twice if he can put forward an order for me to do that kind of presentation. I think one window was missed, and then he had said that he thought it would go to DGR, which is the government and governmental relations subcommittee. I don't know if the presentation happened there and then would be sort of voiced out by the chair, Murphy Ramberletti, to the full City Council, or what that looks like. The document, however, did somehow get to City Council. So when I had said, can I present this, the document itself of the list of projects with the overview, that did get to City Council because someone then referred to having access to it at the last meeting. So there's a little confusion there, but yeah, I'll ask Israel Rivera again, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this needs to go to a ballot, right? And so effectively, the City Council can also vote to say, Nope, there's no popular consensus on the city council for it to move forward. We don't want it to go to ballot. There's no, we don't want this to happen, and so they could vote against it as a group. And if they do, then it just dies. It won't go to ballot. If the city council votes to move this forward, then it goes to the state for approval, and then would go on the ballot in the next election as a ballot question. And it would be 2 different ballot questions. It would be one for, would you like to revoke CPA, yes or no? And it would be one ballot question, would you like to decrease the CPA surcharge from 1.5 to 0.5%? And the issue with the 0.5, and I'm looking for, maybe there's a way to get this information out there in some way, and I'm not quite sure what that is yet, is that, if you look at how we fund projects, if you decrease that by 1/3, you're also, then decreasing the amount that you get in total through state match as well. And then it gets tricky around, we would have years where you can't fund a historic project because there's not enough coming in, because you have to spend 10% per category. So you would probably have more years where you would say, well, this is the year we finally have enough in the historic section to do historic. And we have to roll housing over next year and roll, open space and rec over to next year, with the hope that next year, with, the amount that we now have, we'd be able to do a park, right? So because people don't come to us we've learned with parks, right? No one comes to us and says, we need $50,000. People come to us and say, we need 200,000, we need 350,000, right? Like there's just a certain, even if they're putting their own skin in the game, right? Where they're still looking for us to fund like a really big chunk of that project. So I think especially with parks, we'd be hit hard under a 0.5 tax levy. I think we'd have a hard time. We couldn't do a park a year. We've been doing a park every year, right? We would not be in that position anymore. So I think there's just that piece. All right, any questions or thoughts? Maribel, any questions you have or thoughts you have?
No.
Okay, so let's move to number 4. So Don Sanders has joined us to share the shift in scope of work to his MIFA Murals project. And we're going to be hearing from him. We'll have some time to ask questions, have our questions answered. And then we'll have a discussion around if this is a project that we can move forward with in a shifted form or would have to go to reapplication in another round. Don, thank you so much for joining us. Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Okay, how's that?
There you are. Welcome.
Yeah. Anyhow, I was just saying, it's actually, what can I say? A pleasure to be with you on this beautiful spring evening.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, we in this office, I certainly personally follow these vicissitudes that you have addressed. And what can I say? I'm re-encouraged about, everybody on the committees, care for the city and care for this concern of preservation, which I have to say just totally is, such an important part of what the city has to do and has to deal with. So okay, I have to replug myself. Okay. Anyhow, so yeah, I'm going to say that. Oh, wait a minute. Let me just change where I am. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like, in addition to the problems you've been talking about, they call the theater the magnificent invalid. So I am bringing you, more theater issues, more problems, all of which I think are solvable. So what's happening with the murals is that on April 7th, Jeff Green from Evergreen Restoration Company, which I did send an email with an article about them. They are redoing the capital of the United States as we're talking. So I kind of sent that for people to feel reassured of their excellence. Jeff Green came and met with Bob Parent, and we talked about the issue of where having Evergreen opened all of the murals, which were shipped to New York City. And the basic thing that we're talking about is when they were opened, it was found that they were in much worse shape than we had expected. They had not been, I'm not an expert in that area, had not been properly stored, but they were stored for 10 years. So, I mean, I think, whether it was time or the way they were stored, but the upshot is that Jeff Green assessed that the murals could not be restored and put on an exhibition surface and then taken off of that surface and put on the walls of the Victory Theater, which was kind of what we had been working on as the idea of having the murals restored and exhibited until the Victory was ready to receive them. So, I can answer questions about this. So Jeff's recommendation was that we go forward with restoring the murals and that we take one piece of the murals and restore it to be put on exhibition, with an exhibition about the murals, their importance to the city, the importance of Vincent Maragliata, the Maragliati, the WPA artist who painted them, and that we exhibit that, I think, which would be great as part of the 150th anniversary of the city that's coming up. And then when the theater is ready, we put them, the restored ones that would have to be kept in some kind of storage, put on the walls of the Victory. And so it would mean that we could keep the idea of an exhibition of the murals. It just would not be of all 8 panels, which each panel is 22 feet high. I mean, each full mural is 22 feet by almost 8 feet wide. So, Jeff Green came up with a budget for that. And it is more expensive than the budget that we had originally looked at because of the condition of the murals. And MIFA had already agreed to cover the additional cost that was added past the estimate that VTech Cruda had originally made. And we would like to go forward with restoring the murals, doing the one panel for an exhibition, showing that panel. And we would have the murals done. We'd have saved the murals, and we would carry on with the plan to put them on the walls of the Victory when the Victory is ready. Now, the big issue was, will the Victory ever be ready? Again, I believe the Victory will be, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. But should that not happen, the one great thing would be that the murals, which are very important and very important to be preserved, would be preserved and would be a gift to the city from MIFA. And I'm happy to go into, that's a lot to perhaps absorb. So I'm open to questions and explanations and clarifications.
Michael, do you want to go first?
Oh, yes, Megan, Madam Chairman. Don, just to refresh my memory, what is the status of the current contract that we have with you regarding the restoration of the dollar amount and so on and so forth?
Well, the contract that was put forward was that the murals would be restored and they would be put on exhibition until, okay, yeah.
Oh, I understand that, the dollar amount.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's $95,000, $95,500.
Okay.
And we don't have a contract yet because the
Right.
terms were ever evolving. So it's our
Right.
only project from last year that is not under contract.
Okay, Don, what is the new cost as a result of
Yeah.
discovering that the
Sure.
that
Yes.
the
Yep.
they're in worse shape than you thought.
So the total cost for doing this, which includes restoring all the murals and also creating the smaller exhibition for the one panel, is $242,000. And I have that all, itemized from Evergreen. And if you subtract, and if you subtract 95 from that, that leaves $147,000 of additional cost, which MIFA will absorb.
So the $147,000 is going to come out of the general fund of MIFA
Yes,
and not us.
right, correct,
You
correct.
still want the $95,000 as the seed money for it, and you're going to contribute $147,000 for its completion.
Correct.
And then as a result, when you get all the money, 48 million or whatever the total cost, estimated cost of that project is, when you arrive at that figure, then the mural, would you want the money then, or are you saying you want the money prior to that?
We would use it now to restore the mural. The murals need to be restored now,
Right.
in a timely way. Yeah. When the theater is ready, we would put the murals on the proscenium walls. That we would replace them in the theater.
Okay, and and they'll stay there.
Yes.
Okay, and in the event that you don't reach the 48 million, or the finances become so unworkable that it becomes a bridge too far, you'll gift the two murals to the city of Holyoke.
Correct.
Is that correct?
On permanent loan. The one change in that is that we don't know exactly then what surface they would then be put on a surface to be exhibited wherever the city wanted to put them.
Yeah. Okay.
And we would certainly work with that if that were an eventuality, which I hope will not happen.
When you're defining gift to the city, it's
Yes.
not really a gift, is it? It's a loan.
Well, it's a permanent loan.
Properties.
It's a permanent loan, yes. And we spelled out the terms of that.
The definition of a permanent loan is going to be contained in the new contract. Is that correct?
Yes.
What's the definition, Don? Do you have
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Wording?
Yeah. I'll have to, it's a pretty standard permanent loan exhibition of an artwork. So it becomes, it's a permanent loan from MIFA, and it says that the murals would be exhibited for the public good, and that they could not be sold by the city. If there were any income from those in terms of, things like Christmas tree ornaments or T-shirts or the images used, that we suggested that the income from anything, any concession, let's put it that way, with the images of the murals be donated to the Holyoke Cultural Council to be used however they would wish to do.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, Don, just to kind of recap here. In other words, what you're saying now is in order to restore the full 8 murals and have one set up for the display, that is $242,000, right?
Correct, including, and that includes, John, the cost of the little exhibition. What
Right.
Evergreen has come up with a plan to put a wonderful exhibition of the one panel together with information about Miragliati, etc. Yeah.
Now, later on, if these are to be put permanently in the Victory, the other ones, that's
Yes.
a separate cost down the road, am I right?
Correct, and that is
Okay.
not that's part of the construction cost of the Victory.
Okay.
That is not on the city or the anybody other than the cost of construction.
Just as an aside, what kind of a gap you looking at right now, Don, as far as the,
Yeah.
and of course, costs have probably gone up another 20%,
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible, but it's reality.
It's scary. I don't need to tell you, John, but
Yeah.
where we're at the moment is that the total cost of the Victory Theater project is coming in at about, and this is with the increase from COVID, it's the latest estimate is $51,000. That's everything having to do with construction, hard, soft, operations, and it includes a sustainability fund for the first 3 years of the operation of the theater once the doors open. That's a fairly standard, considered sensible, plan.
51 million, John?
And where are you at
Yes.
about now?
We are at 33.
So one of my questions is around the 100, so like the 95.5K that we had sort of put forward through city council now becomes 39% of the cost of the project. Is the 147,000 liquid? Like, do you have that
Yes,
funding on
we
hand
do. We do
to finish
actually.
this work now?
We do. We can commit it from funds that from not only the funds that we had. It's part of the construction cost.
But it's because I think one of my understandings was that when you have like it's 33 million on paper, but you might not actually have access to it until you have everything. But is that not true for the 147,000?
Correct. There's a liquid amount of the 33. So just to break that down, in cash, we have raised about $6 to $6.5 million in cash during the course of the project, of which there is cash available. Then about 12 million is from state and federal historic tax credits, which have all been awarded. They are in the bag. But the trick with the historic tax credits is that you get them when the doors open. It's a reimbursement. So projects that use historic tax credits have to take bridge loans during the construction. And then when the doors open, it's like I always say, it's like the TV series, The Millionaire. Right? So they come to the door and hand you the check so that's 12 million. We have a $13 million authorized bond from the state, which we are working on getting activated at the moment. And the good news there is that in January, actually in December, the state legislature passed a unanimous bill in support of the Victory. It's the first amount that we expect to have come from ARPA funds. And it was passed unanimously by the House, the Senate, and signed by the governor. And it validates the plan and the data, the construction costs, the budgets, et cetera, everything that we submitted as a support for the project. So that is the status of the 33 million, basically. And what we are doing now is we're on a major capital campaign, of a structured capital campaign to close the gap for the additional 20, call it 20 million bucks.
So one of the pieces that I know is different, like one of the major shifts here is around, rather than restoring them fully and installing them somewhere, there's now this additional complication around storage. So if there's only one panel that's being displayed at Wisteria Hearst,
right,
then even like in the Miracle League playground, there has been so much back and forth between the city engineer and their applicant or the recipient at this point to determine exactly who is responsible for storing it, even in the weeks prior to installation, and like who owns that, who has liability insurance on it. Like it's a real thing.
Yep.
So I'm just thinking through like, what do those details look like? Because I think in any project, what we've learned is the devil's in the detail.
The answer to those, and we've thought them through, is that MIFA would take responsibility for the liability, for insurance, all of those aspects. And we would also take responsibility for the storage, the continuing storage of the murals that have not been affixed to the wall, that have not been made part of the exhibition. And those would continue to be stored in New York under safe circumstances where they are now, and that would be at our expense. And we would put that in the agreement, exactly, specifically each one of these conditions that you articulated. Yeah.
Okay. Marco, I see your hand up, and then Michael.
Yes, thank you. I got a little concerned when I heard your the opinion of Mr. Green saying that it was much worse than anticipated than they were previously. And I'm going to say a couple things.
Sure.
I would want to make sure that maybe are you restoring the one panel to see how it comes out? Because there are times when something is just not restorable, or you restore it by making it all new. Like I'd like to understand what that process is.
Sure.
And maybe are you going to make another submission that has, like, I'd like to see the report. I'd like to understand what the medium is that they're going to be affixed to. Mm-hmm. And then maybe understand, is that then going to be affixed to the wall? I understand that you're not going to affix them to something and then remove them and then affix them again. Is it plexiglass? Is it wood? Is it glass? I guess I'd want to understand that. Sure. And then the last thing I'll say, I'm just going to shoot it all out at once.
Yeah.
Is what was the total? 242.
240.
I guess I'd be a little nervous to hand over a large amount for all 8 panels when you look at the one that's restored and go, wow, that doesn't look so great. Like I love the idea of the restoration. It reminds me of things that maybe they do in churches where they restore frescoes and things.
Yep, you're exactly.
To me, it's at that level of restoring art. But sometimes you look at a restoration and you go, wow, that's been all repainted. Like, that looks different. Yeah. And I would just want to make sure that the money was well spent, that it's actually feasible.
Yeah.
And so when you said that first comment, it made me go, oh.
I know. Well, you can imagine how I felt.
Well,
but it's an answer to that, and I think, Bob Parent would probably attest, because I got this news, when Jeff arrived in the City Hall ballroom and said his assessment of the situation. But the answer to it, the good news, is that the fragility is not a deal breaker in terms of Jeff Green has absolutely confirmed that they can be fully and properly restored. It's the thinness, they're on canvas. And so it's the thinness of the material that they are painted on that is fragile. I mean, when I say fragile, obviously the paint on the canvas too there's been flaking and discoloration and all that kind of thing, and bacteria has grown on it. But they can be completely restored, because I actually said, I have fiscal responsibility, for the whole Victory project. And I said, well, shouldn't we just think about, making photographic reproductions of these murals and putting them up, rather than going through, the actual restoration of the painted murals. And Jeff was very, very clear about it. And there are two things. Just as an aside, you mentioned about in churches, Evergreen, I just was talking about, they're doing the United States Capitol. Their last big project was the Sistine Chapel in Italy, which is exactly that kind of, fantastically detailed and has to be perfectly done. So Jeff absolutely has attested, and he's attested in the documents that he sent us, that it can be done and it will be worth doing. And it's the issue of, the problem was he did not feel that the canvas, which will have to be strengthened, can be put on like a fine aluminum mesh. They're 22 feet tall by, as I said, almost 8 feet wide. And to do that and have them be exhibited for 2 years that way, and then try to think of some way to take the canvas then off that and put them on the walls of the theater, he thought was going to be the thing that would be the most dangerous for it. So the other issue is that as far as when I said, well, maybe we can just do reproductions of them. I alluded to the historic tax credits that we have for the building, and they are very specifically part of them is that the murals, the original murals, must be put back in those positions. So that's, you know, if Evergreen had come back and said we can't do it, they can't be done, we'd have to relook at the whole thing. But he has absolutely confirmed that it can be done.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Michael and then John.
Yeah, Don,
Hey, Michael.
at what point in time, let's assume the Victory Theater takes longer or it's not going to be reality at some point in time, you know, like at what date do these become a permanent gift to the city of Holyoke?
I think at the moment, you know, the way we have written it is that when it has been determined that the Victory can't reopen, and that would be, you know, either the monies haven't been raised or, you know, at the moment, you know, and again,
I mean, I hope I'm wrong when I'm playing devil's advocate.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
I know, I'm with you, John. At the moment, you know, and I've said this before, but it's my job to give potential timelines and schedules. If everything goes on schedule in our fundraising now, we would be able to go to real construction at the latest December of 2022, if things go the way we'd like to see them go with the ARPA funds, et cetera. And then it is a 2-year construction project. So even when construction begins, it's 18 months to 24 months. So those murals would not be going up, you know, under the best of circumstances until, until 2025. But, you know.
Would it be realistic to name something like if the Victory is not completed in 10 years?
Sure, yes, absolutely. But that could absolutely be added. That you know, agreement that we put out there, which, you know, by the way, you know, I had a lot of consultations with the Museum Association of America and everything. It's a pretty standard permanent loan, but it's completely, you know, can be customized. And I think that would be very wise. I would see no problem with that.
Michael?
Don, you had mentioned that, and I'm glad you did, that part of the conditions of the contract would contain language to say that the city of Holyoke cannot sell these murals for any reason. They're permanently to the citizens of the city. I presume you guys won't sell it to a bidder either.
No,
Should-
absolutely not.
should
We are
someone-
under the same, correct.
So you would not sell it to a third party if you needed an extra $2 million, if someone were to
No.
give you a check for that.
No.
You would
If
not
the
sell it.
theater doesn't open, and we were very specific, and the legal advice from the Museum Association, because we felt we didn't want to see specifically a kind of situation happen that happened, frankly, in Pittsfield with the collection of Norman Rockwell's that were
Exactly.
given to, you know, and then the museum sold them. Well, I can have sympathy for the museum's need for money, but we wanted to specifically not enable that kind of thing to happen, so that even if when I'm gone from this earth and the MIFA is still working on opening the Victory, which I think I'm going to be here, and I think we're going to get it open. MIFA cannot dispose of those pictures. They cannot. The board could not sell them. They have to go to, under the terms that we planned, they have to go to the city.
So in the contract that you're talking about, neither the city of Holyoke nor MIFA will sell these to anybody. They're
Correct.
permanently given to the city of Holyoke
Correct.
as
Correct.
a gift.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it has happened, you know, has happened in Pittsfield that, you know,
Yeah,
I mean, an entity can go, yeah, but that is the terms, that's the terms that we want them to be on.
No, beautiful. I mean, I just can see somebody in Boston getting a check for $2 million for both murals and saying, wow, found money. We're
Yeah.
okay. Go get them. Pick them up.
Yeah. Hey, I hope you read, you know, if you read the paper this week, the Andy Warhol's Marilyn Monroe painting, which originally sold for $249, right? And when it was painted, sold for 100 and what is it, 190, I forget, 195. Yeah. And so we specifically, I mean, that that could have, I mean, okay, Vincent Miragliata is not Andy Warhol, but Jeff Green will be the first to tell you that he is a highly collectible artist and a very well-known WPA artist. And that's why it's so important, I think, to save these pictures. And I think they would always be an adornment to the city in some place, you know, in the city.
Beautiful.
So
No, that's
one-
I know.
So one piece that I'm still thinking about is, you know, we have one meeting left in our fiscal year.
Yeah.
I know that we need to get this under contract before
Mhm.
we are rolling now into the next fiscal year. So I'm wondering if it's possible for us to hear directly from Jeff Green.
Sure.
And maybe even like,
Mhm.
if you know, the wonderful thing about Zoom is if he's got the laptop near where the murals are stored, he
Yep.
can show us the murals,
Yep, absolutely.
right, in their current condition, and we
Absolutely.
can hear from him directly,
Mm-hmm.
and we
Yep.
can get a better sense of it. I also would really like to hear from Megan Seeler, the director of Wisteria
Yes,
Hearst, around
yes.
like just directly from her, like,
Yeah.
I'm in support of this, and here's where it would go in Wisteria Hearst. Like, I just feel like there's details here that I just want to hear directly from folks to kind of make sure that
Absolutely.
we
I
are.
have to share with you, Wisteria Hearst was Bob Parent's idea, and I don't want to speak, I mean, she has not bought into it. I mean, you know, that was a suggestion because
Right.
Bob thought that actually having the exhibition in City Hall, something that would be on the floor, originally they were going to go up on the proscenium stage where there could be meetings and gatherings, you know, in the ballroom, which they wouldn't be in the way. But if it's an exhibition that's on the floor, you know, it could be in people's way. And so he was thinking that, I mean, I love the idea of Wisteria Hearst. And by the way, 2 of the restored theater seats that we did as prototypes of what the seats are going to be are already at Wisteria Hearst. But I don't, Meg, she has not,
Okay.
she hasn't bought this deal. It's an idea, you know. But I can only feel that if that doesn't work, we can find a right place, you know. So yeah.
Can I send you the date for our next meeting
Yep.
then? And then
Yes. Yep.
we can coordinate to make sure that those folks know to come to that meeting.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm happy to organize them to do
Okay.
that. Jeff is expecting to do that. He'd like to, and I think you'd really enjoy it.
Okay, that would be great. Are there any more questions for Don? Okay, so Don, thank you so much for sticking with us and talking and answering so candidly. And I know you get a lot of questions, and I feel like, you know, you answered them very candidly, and I appreciate that a lot.
Well, I love this project. This city is a great city. And, you know, I loved hearing you talk. I mean, not just you, Meg, but the committee. It's just, I think people don't understand how much care goes into this city and how much there is here to be preserved. And, you know, we're trying to do our best.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don.
Thanks. Thanks very much.
Okay. So any other thoughts that folks want to voice?
I only have a question. The murals, they're going to show the murals in the next meeting, like that we can see exactly what he's talking about or what they need?
Yeah, so I saw that in the chat. So I
Okay.
was from Amy, from you.
Yeah.
So that's why I was saying, like, let's have the restorer in, and like I'll push for, but we want to be able to see the murals. Like, use your computer, show us the murals and talk to us about them.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think, you know, Don has so much passion for this project, you know, and he really, his heart is in the right place. And I think this project's gone on because he feels really passionate about a project that really doesn't have the details lined up to make it happen, which is par for the course, right, for this wider project. And so I think what we can do as a committee is, like, as respectfully and like
graciously as possible, help him either get those details together to move forward, or say, we're not there yet. And like, get the details together, come back to us in the next fiscal year. And I don't know exactly, like, if the restorer can't meet with us, if we can't see the murals, if the mysterious director is not in a, like a, yes, absolutely, I'm ready, and here's the spot, like, then we have to just say, you're not ready, right? And go back and do your work this summer to pull your pieces together and reapply next year. And we need stuff in writing. The other piece that I do want to, and I put this in the agenda, a discussion about, we don't have any formal policy around timeline around the execution of a contract. And I really do want a policy in writing, something that we have voted on as a committee, because I think this kind of thing could happen again, right? We've learned these housing projects in particular, and historic projects as well, could be very complicated, and it can look like they're ready to go, and then a detail can shift, and suddenly everything's in question, and it's not really clear, and you know, we're still figuring out as a committee, like, to what extent do we allow someone to shift the scope of their work? In the case of Armor & Co., it was like, well, Mass Historic says no. Like, the preservation restriction would prevent you from doing this thing. There's nothing we can do about it. There's a set policy. It's here, right? But in this case, this could go on and on until we just decide to say no. And we don't have anything in writing around like what we really do as a committee concerning this sort of thing. So I don't know if it makes sense to set a timeline or an expectation, but this was not a project from this year. This was a project from last year, and they're still not even under contract. And until something is under contract, there's no terms, right, that they've agreed to. Nothing's been executed. So like our standard contracts now are like, you have 3 years. At the end of the 3 years, the funding is no longer encumbered. Under this project, if we now create a contract and they have 3 years, they will actually have had 5 years.
Mhm.
Right.
It's like,
So-
when does the clock start? Because nothing's been signed, you know?
Right, the
Yeah.
clock starts and the contract has been signed. It's never been a problem before,
Mhm.
but I don't want to assume arbitrarily it's only going to be this project. It could be others. And I want a sense of what we want as a committee. And if
Yeah.
we can have a policy around like, is it you have a year to execute a contract? To
I'm wondering,
develop and
Megan, if-
execute a contract? Or is it 2 years? Is it like, I just think we need to have some sort of understanding.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, I'm sure maybe other communities probably face this, that maybe Amy with her contacts could maybe reach out and see if there's any other maybe samples we could look at that other communities have used.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure we're not alone in this, you know, as others are probably faced with it.
Yeah, Amy, you often meet with the other CPC
Yeah.
administrators. Have you brought this up to them in terms of like?
Not this particular, but something similar I brought up was, I think once was, well, I don't remember what was said about it, but sometimes, you know, there's a project and it's going forward, but I haven't been sent any invoices. And it's a little strange because it's like, I think this even happened with the stained glass windows one, surprisingly, was, you know, and that just occurred to me, well, how long will we just hold on, you know, to this money for this project? I mean, of course, it's encouraging that we know the work has been done, but it's still, you know, a little odd if the invoices don't come in for a long time. Plus, I think there's ways to kind of formalize stuff, like some other communities, actually, in our contracts that we're doing, we do say that the committee has the right to require quarterly reports. And so other communities use forms for that. So, you know, like I've just been asking them, you know, updates on their project, and, you know, I fill out this big spreadsheet, but they could be sending something to me and I could be reminding them, and it like could be more formalized where they'd say what percentage of the project is done and what percentage has been expended or whatever.
Oh, is it
So no, I haven't
possible?
brought up the specific issue because the thing with the contracts, though, sometimes like we thought at the beginning that the city legal department was going to be drafting these, but there was a lot of change and they were understaffed. And so that kind of, meant that there was a delay. So that was one aspect that maybe won't always be an issue.
Right. I mean, at this point, we're moving into a system where like, we'll have by the end of this fiscal year, every project under contract, which is very different from what's happened in the past and is a good thing. Right. So you're right to say that also there was some weirdness the last year or two around like, we just finished executing contracts this fall, right? From the previous year, like it really took some time other than the MIFA Murals project. Helene, I know you wanted to speak and so did Mary.
Yeah. Would it be possible to do like a very just like standard MOU that is done for the pendency? I mean, I know the contracts are going to be individualized and they're not, you wouldn't want to set contract, but some of these policies that you're talking about, so that that's something, within, because it sounds like right now it's like it's announced to the good luck, congrats, you got this. And then you're trying to sort things out. And then I understand the concern about it goes over a year and, and it sounds like the nature of work was different because of the poor condition of the murals in that case. And there's a lot of good reasons why things might not go quickly, but just so that it's a very clear kind of, these are the expectations as we come up with the specific contract. And, it's an MOU. So it's like, it's an understanding that both agree, like, okay, we understand these are what's going to happen. We'd expect a contract to be within a year. We'd expect the invoices. We'd expect all of those pieces. And then if there's, things that have to be done a little bit differently, that would go into the contract. But something kind of as like, it's a policy, but the benefit of MOU is that the other party signs too. So like they recognize that it's the policy, and it would be something in dependency while you're waiting to be able to hammer out the details.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that we would need an MOU or could it just be precedent that's set by the committee? Like, could we just vote that that's one of our policies? Because that was my understanding, is that we could just vote to say like, if a project has not fully executed a contract within a year, that funding will no longer be encumbered to that project and will return to the general fund.
I mean, I think one of the positives of an MOU, and I don't know that it's necessary, is just that like everyone's on the same page because about that's the policy. And I mean, you can always say like, here's the policy of what we're going to expect before we have a finalized contract. But it's, it just seems like there's a bunch of kind of wishy-washy time. There's this time where things aren't like you're not even sure how long it's going to be before something can get nailed down while logistics are being worked out, which is, as much as possible, it's better to have everything ironed out, even if it takes longer to make a contract. It's much worse to have a contract that's got things in it that, are not fully ironed out.
I also wondered too, though, if we could add in the MOU, not just that you have a year to fully execute a contract, but also we could add in, you have to have a fully developed and approved preservation restriction or affordable housing restriction like that. Also, like if a restriction is required, it's also required to be developed within a year, even if it's not recorded until the project is completed. So I do like that idea. It would make it clear. Yeah, I do. I like that. Mary?
All right, so I have a whole bunch of questions now. Okay, so I had to look up MOU while I was sitting here. So that's a memorandum of understanding. A memorandum of understanding. At what point would that be done? Would that be done when they first apply? Or
no,
when
it would be done in like the congratulations, you have been, recommended this funding and it's been, promised by CP, by the city council. Here's this memorandum of understanding we're sending you through, sign now from Amy, and it will be like a standard, template that everyone would have to sign.
Okay. All right. So I was going to ask if we could simply make a motion, but we had the same conversation last time. And we said that we wanted to get further research and examples. And now that I'm hearing about the MOU, I'm thinking we have to do that. We have to get the research, or we have to get an example before we vote. So how can we do that? How can we get something specific in front of us before we vote? I mean, I think it would be great to just make the motion that Megan said a few minutes ago, saying that if you don't have your contract signed within 12 months, then the money goes back. That sounded simple enough, but really now that we're talking about a whole memorandum of understanding and all that,
Yeah.
I
And
think
also
we
it
need to
wouldn't
have
go into
sample.
effect until the next round. It wouldn't be in effect now. It would be in effect moving forward. So
Okay.
I also think like eventually, and I'm saying eventually, but really there's one meeting left to the end of the year. At the next meeting, we're gonna have to vote specific just to this project on for the MIFA
On the
murals.
MIFA project. Okay. So then you're saying then that we have time. And that's fine. Yeah, we have time after the fiscal year flips over.
Yeah, we could
but-
consider this in an August or September meeting, I think.
Okay.
It's just something that we have to have ready for when we are, kind of going through this process again by next January, February.
How can we get a specific example in front of us?
I'm wondering if Helene and Amy can connect to figure out what that might look like.
I would definitely be interested in whether that's an idea that's been pursued in other communities, or something similar. So
I mean, Amy can certainly reach out to the other
Yeah.
CPC administrators. I think they meet every month.
I'm happy to think about it. It's a very different kinds of MOU than ones that I've been involved with. I mean, although the principles are similar, like it's sort of what's done when things are a little bit, the formal relationship and like transactions aren't worked out, but you want to have something that's clear that there is this intent to kind of work together. So that's fine. I'm happy to connect with Amy on that.
I have a feeling that they don't do that, but because when I asked if they, how strict they are about deadlines, they mostly, at least I know Somerville is pretty flexible about that, they said so, but I will ask, yeah.
Mary, you have more questions?
No, I'll take down my hand raising sign.
Okay. So, are we ready to move on to the next one? Okay. So, number 5 is checking on communication with FY22 applicants. So in the last meeting, we talked about setting up a system where different folks on CPC would have an applicant or a recipient or two to check in with on a monthly basis. I haven't sent those emails out to connect you all because Amy and I were working on language that would kind of introduce this idea of the quarterly report. So like every month would be a check-in. Hey, just looking, how's the project coming along? Just checking in. And then every 4th month, like on the quarterly mark, it would be, okay, just a reminder that we're looking for your quarterly report. And that's just something that we're going to start pushing for, primarily because sometimes things come out of the woodwork. And we're finding that unless recipients are directly asked, they're not necessarily coming to us to say, like, oh yeah, we've been having a really hard time with the restorer. And we've sort of just been handling this on our own and like, not mentioning it, right? But this is good information for us to have to just get a better sense of how projects are going. And the quarterly report piece also says like, and have you expended any funds? Like, do you have any invoices that we should be expecting? Do you have any photographic evidence that, progress is occurring on your project if it's ongoing? Which I think, again, it's a process that you set up. And for some, it will always be your emailing and they're going to say, nope, hasn't gone to the story yet. Okay, thanks. I'll tell the committee, right? And then, finally it's yep. And now it's done. Here's everything. Here's the report, right? You bring it to the committee. For some projects like a MIFA Murals project, right, might be really important to be asking for ongoing updates and ongoing proof of work. So I think different projects are going to interact with this requirement differently. But I think it could be really important for some projects to have this thing that we're leaning into and setting up as precedent. Mary, your hand's back up, or is that not? It hasn't come back down.
No, it's up because I have an answer that
Oh,
I'm
yay.
really excited about.
All right, Mary, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a report. When I
Cool.
saw the thing on the agenda, I really quickly went and asked Yoni about the status of his things. So first, on the Glue-Tac property, they have a contract with Green Agers. So,
Yay.
first of all, they hired, an organization. They have a contract with them. Green Agers had a hiring event. They have 42 eligible candidates ready and willing to go. And I think they said, he said, was it this week or next week? They're going on site to begin, Yoni's going to be going on site with that guy from Green Agers to say exactly what's going to be done. So that's good. And the other piece of information is about the Scots Tower project, and that is their Land and Water Foundation funding came through. So that's yay. So they got the matching funds, and so all that purchase should go through smoothly. So that's my report.
Woo. Thank you so much, Mary. Does anyone else have any other reports? Okay. Michael, yes.
Well, as Amy pointed out, the War Memorial contract has been executed and it's ready to go. The work will start on of washing the War Memorial building in the next week or two. I think
Yay.
the weather has some effect on the when to start. I think now that the warmer weather is here, they'll begin the project in another week or two, and it's going to take about a month to complete it if all things go well. So that's ready to go, actually. And the same true as Lady Liberty. They're going to begin work on that in another week or two. And it'll go from the end of May till probably July at this stage of the cleaning part, because it's weather dependent. But that's ready to go. It's, the contracts are awarded, they got the material, they got the scope of work, they know what they have to do. It's just starting, and that's going to start in about another week or two.
Cool. The only update I have is from Bob Parent that the playground equipment for Mayor Field is scheduled to be delivered in the next 2 weeks. That's really exciting. So I'm going to start working on Mayor Field's playground. And I also checked back in with Maureen Tisdale, who was the interim Parks and Rec director, about two things. One, about there's a second piece of the Mayor's Field playground project, which is it's that plus the field improvements. And so we had sort of gotten sucked into this, we were only asking for updates on the playground. And then I realized that there's this other part, which was Parks and Rec, the labor in kind was supposed to be and we're going to improve the field with using our own department. So I checked in on that, and it was a little bit of a surprise. Maureen still, I think, again, took over from Tracy Shepard as interim director, and it wasn't on our radar. So they're currently talking about how they're going to hold up their end of the bargain around doing the improvements to Mayor Field and it not being just the playground. So, I'll keep having that conversation to follow that up. And I also spoke with her about the Smith's Ferry sign. And so we're working on a sign for Smith's Ferry. They don't have a permanent sign. So we're working on that, and Parks and Rec is going to cover it under their budget. So that's really good news. Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we're going to move into other. So I have two things for other. One that Andrew met with Amy, and Amy has also been doing a lot of work with Tanya and other folks on the budget and everything else that has to be done to move us financially forward. And they have a draft of that was sent to the mayor for the next meeting. We'll make sure that we have that plus a fuller picture of what is sort of excess that's moving forward, because similarly to this year, there's going to be, $729,000 in the budget, but also money from projects that are returning into the coffers, things that, et cetera, projects that have been underspent, right? So that is still a piece that we're going to make sure is in a good place to share at the next meeting. And Luis Salazar is almost done with interviews. He has captured all the film that he has to capture in terms of all of the B-roll, all of the, exterior shots. He took some really great drone video. With the wait till you see the Lady Liberty clip, Mike. It is so like, it's cool. It's amazing to see something that like you're so used to seeing at like this ground level, like the swooping of the what is Lady Liberty in the park, you know, like or in the greater neighborhood. It's cool to see it in that sense. So really excited to see how that's coming out. And I was interviewed on Monday. And just to talk about what CPA is, right? So he's making one spotlight that's just about CPA, and then one about each of the different projects, and then also weaving them together. And one of the last steps will be then doing the Spanish translation for the subtitles and making sure that that piece is done too. So, but I'm hoping that we are going to have that by June. And I'm hoping to have a watch party so that we can watch it together. Yeah. All right. Anything else under others?
I have a
Yeah.
whole bunch of things.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, so along with the Salazar thing, there's the graphic designer, and also what about the historic projects timeline and City Hall renovations? And then under project status, did we get the money back from the armor rescission? And is the merry-go-round going forward? And did the JFK Memorial get their sign?
No questions at all. Okay, I'm gonna have to start, and then you have to keep feeding me the next one. Okay, so the graphic designers, I reached out to Joan Pimentel, who's done some graphic design work in general for us and our website. She and I had a good conversation 2 days ago or 3 days ago. And, you know, effectively, there's a piece around functionality and there's a piece around it graphically looking awesome. There's some tension between those two things in terms of what's free and what's really expensive. And there doesn't seem to be like there's not like a great middle ground. So she's doing some research and trying to figure out that piece, because we can very cheaply put together a map. It just won't really graphically be compelling to anybody. So we're working on that piece and seeing if it's a good fit. She said she should get a proposal to us within the next 2 or 3 days, and then we'll go from there to see if this is something that, you know, the vision is there and it's a good fit, or will we go and see if there's somebody else that kind of will have that vision or that capacity. We have, Amy, was it $2,200 left in the admin budget, although that does not include paying Andrew, which we still have to for his budgetary.
Well, that's just an estimate, because I don't know, because
Yeah.
it's a projection based on the average, you know, of how much I'm working per week, et cetera, that could be left over. Yeah.
Yeah. And we still have to pay Andrew, right? So it's not like we're rolling in money. But if, you know, we needed to pay her a few $100s or someone else a few $100s, we would have the capacity to do that. So it's a question of like, what can you get for the money that you have? I'd rather, I mean, this is my preference, but of course it's up to the committee. My preference is to do something and do it well. And I think that we do have to make sure that we're explaining to the taxpayers how we're spending their funding. And I think doing it in a compelling way makes more sense than doing it in a way that's cheap. So I'm leaning into trying to find options, right? And so when Joanne got back to me and said, well, we could really cheaply do it for this, but it wouldn't look great. You know, I just said, well, keep looking. I want real options, right? Find the thing that's going to look great, but you think is really expensive. And then we will see the options for what they really are. And then we can decide, right? Is it worth that or is it not? And then we'll go from there. Yeah. Okay. What's the next one, Mary?
Historic preservation time, or the timeline for historic projects. Any more on that, or just that's in the works, or what?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to follow back up with the chair and see, because they were gonna talk about it more, and I think they had to have a vote on it. So, and I'm waiting for them before we do anything else on it.
Okay.
Marco, do you have an update on that?
Yeah, I was just raised my hand. Unfortunately, we met on Monday night and I was sick. I didn't go to work, and I wasn't able to attend the meeting. So I didn't think of asking for an update before this meeting. I apologize for that, but yeah, I don't have an update.
Okay, that's fine. Well, I mean, hopefully at the next meeting, it's something that you can raise and then let us know if we're good to go with that timeline, and we can go from there.
Okay, will do.
City Hall renovations also on hold.
Well, we have the document and Amy was doing some thinking around what was eligible. And I know that will take some time because it's a huge report.
Okay, the armor company, did they send their money back?
Was the rescission fully signed, Amy? I believe so.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it
that came
was.
back. Yeah, that came back, but,
So yes, it's fully signed, which means that it's back.
Oh, good.
I think we
But
need
that's
more, in terms of the other question, I think we need more info about that from, you know, the city to know what can be eligible. So it's not that I'm still reviewing it, it's, we don't have the information.
Which information do you feel like you're
Detail.
missing, Amy? Is it just the
Detail.
legal opinion needing to be shifted?
I don't remember, I'd have to go through my emails, but we need more detail, I think. I'd have to go through my emails, but it's not like it's just something that's in my court anymore. I don't remember, but I have to look at it again. Oh, I think I might have sent it actually to Stuart Saganor and he hasn't gotten to it yet. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, well, maybe in the next meeting, it's something that you can give us an update on. Okay.
Yeah, hard because like normally people fill out an application and what was sent to me is not an application, so.
No, because I think what this is, and it's a little bit in reverse, you're right. We have this massive scope of work and it's huge. We have this report done from 2014 and we don't want to waste our time creating an application that you come back and say, no, it's not eligible. They're saying like, we are the city and we want to know what's eligible. We're going to create an application based on that. Like, I get it, right? Like, so I think it is a little bit in reverse, but I think it's our city hall. We're, we're the committee that's, largely, not just serving non-city projects. We do a lot for the city, so. All right, what's the next piece, Mary?
The merry-go-round, something happened with their contractor in regards to the stationary and the mobile horses. Are they all set now?
I don't think that we've heard back from them since they said that.
Nothing new?
No.
Okay.
I can reach out to them.
And the JFK Memorial was all done. It's just something about their sign. Is that all resolved?
Yeah, there's also a further issue, which is that the temporary sign has always been just like a disaster. Never straight. It's always like falling down. I reached out to Mark Joyce and it was just like, this looks awful. Like there's gotta be a way either to redo the sign temporarily or to come, where's the permanent sign? And he did respond and said like, I'm really frustrated too. Yes, the permanent sign is not out. And that was the last I heard from him, that he was really pushing for the permanent sign to be done soon and that it was in the works, but has not yet been completed.
Okay, thank you very much.
You got it. All right, any others? All right, folks.
I will have an update for the Miranda play next meeting, okay?
Yes, perfect. Okay. Okay, our next meeting, I have a question around, instead of doing the second week, if it's possible to do the first, like if it's possible to meet June 1st instead of June 8th. And if it's not, then that's fine. I'm a very minor dental surgery on the 3rd. And I'm worried that I still might have swelling and look crazy.
Which date did you say, Meg?
I'm wondering if we can meet on June 1st, the first Wednesday of the month instead of June 8th. If we can't, it's okay. You guys are just have to look at me looking like a football player. So I'm gonna be a little swollen, but we could do that if we need to.
I can do it.
I can do it.
I can do it too. No problem.
Okay, so the 1st is okay at 6 o'clock? Okay, and 6 o'clock is still a time that works for folks, like versus 6:30, or I know this meeting was shorter, which is good. I was hoping it would be shorter. Okay, all right, so 6 o'clock, June 1st.
All right.
All right, well, I hope everyone gets to really enjoy a little bit more of this evening. It's pretty out. Go pick some lilacs if you haven't yet and bring them in your house so that your house smells great.
Okay, have a good evening, everyone.
Yep,
Thank
I
you.
move
thank you
to
all.
adjourn, motion to adjourn.
Second,
Bye,
All
everyone.
right, nice.
Bye.
Thank you all. Have a good evening. Bye.
good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.